Hello and welcome back to the Find Your Feet podcast, a podcast show dedicated to helping you get closer to your true authentic self by helping you find your feet in life. Welcome to episode 91.
Today we are joined by a very, very special guest who we had the honour of interviewing, Persia Lawson.
Persia is an author, speaker, millennial dating expert, and one of the UK's most successful love coaches, according to the Times magazine. She was once a serial cheater and obsessive love addict. Her 20s were pretty wild, which you hear about in her new book, Love is Coming, which we kind of speak about in the episode today. And we and Abby have both been reading it and we really, really recommend it. I think there's something that everyone can relate to in that book. It's very, very good. But she is now very proud to be in a healthy, committed relationship. And she is passionate about helping women attract and sustain their own version of that healthy relationship in the chaos of the modern dating world, because it's not always easy out there in this dating world. And so we were buzzing to talk to Persia because she's full of good advice and her book is just full of so much good advice. And just talk a little bit more about relationships again on the podcast, because we don't cover it that much, but it's something that I think about all the time. It's fascinating, and especially when you're like trying to find your feet in life, like knowing how to navigate dating, relationships. It's a minefield, so you need like the advice, you need guidance. No one teaches us this stuff in school, so we're very excited for you all to hear the episode today.
Yeah, and I feel like all the things she covers are so applicable to every area of your life anyway. Like there's just so many amazing tips, so I can't wait for you all to hear.
But before we jump into the chat with Persia, we've just got a quick word from the people that make this podcast possible, our sponsor, BetterHelp. Now, you will hear in this episode Persia talking about the importance of doing your own healing work when it comes to dating, to attracting healthy partners and sustaining the healthy relationship that you want. And part of that healing work is therapy. And BetterHelp are a professional online counselling service who set you up with a therapist in just 48 hours of you signing up for an account with them.
Yeah, and you can decide however you want to work with BetterHelp. So you can set up video calls, phone calls, or just text messages to work with your therapist on whatever you feel like you need help for. So say, for example, if you do want help with how you show up in relationships, you can explain that on the website and they will find the right therapist for you. And then if you're paired with someone and you think, actually, I want a different therapist, I'm not getting what I want out of it, you can change for free until you're happy.
Wherever you're listening to this podcast now, wherever you are in the world, BetterHelp services are available to you, as it is a global company just run online. So you will get put in touch with a really highly qualified licensed counsellor from the comfort of your own home. Another amazing thing about BetterHelp is it is so much more affordable than traditional offline counselling, and they are kindly giving our listeners an extra 10% off their first month of therapy. So all you need to do to get this discount is go to the link betterhelp.com/find your feet. That's betterhelp.com/find your feet. We've left the link in the show notes. Click through there and the discount is automatically applied to your account and you can start your therapy journey and be seen by someone in just 2 days.
Yeah, and if you have any questions at all about therapy or about BetterHelp, or you just want some guidance, you can always come and chat to us on Instagram at Finding Your Feet Podcast.
That's all for now. Let's get into the chat with Persia.
Okay, so I'd just like to start by introducing the lovely Persia Lawson onto our show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on our podcast.
It's an honour. Thanks for having me.
So Persia, you have such an interesting story. That is first what drew us both to you, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I love your background. We would love to know about what you do now as a love coach and how you got to this point.
So I'll try and make this as brief as possible because I could make this story go on forever. But I'll start with where I am right now. So I essentially help women find and keep great relationships in the chaos of the modern dating world, because it's pretty mad out there, in case you hadn't noticed, and obviously even madder since COVID. So it's been really interesting being a love coach in that time. And so, yeah, I write books about relationships and dating and speak and have a podcast and all sorts of different things. But I am like the least likely person to have become a love coach, really, because for most of my life, I was an absolute hot mess in all things relating to romance. Growing up, my parents had struggled with drug addiction, and the way that I dealt with that from a very young age was essentially just using men to kind of distract myself, to validate myself, to escape. And it got sort of increasingly more toxic, particularly when my parents actually both got sober when I was in my mid-teens. because I was so used to just having a lot of chaos at home. So when my parents got sober and I suddenly got this like really great family life that I was just not used to, I just sort of went and got even more insane in my romantic life. So I cheated on every boyfriend, lots of one night stands. Like at uni, it just was really crazy. And then I became an actress. I went to drama school and then got into acting, which I'd done ever since I was younger. And obviously that is an environment that is not the best if you are predisposed to being quite self-destructive in any way. So yeah, I was doing some cool stuff and traveling around the world, but I was just, again, creating absolute havoc wherever I went. And then it came to sort of just before my mid-20s, and I actually, it was 2 weeks after I got out of I finished my master's in classical acting. I started working at a strip club in London as a hostess. And long story short, one night I basically got sexually assaulted when I was there. And then I went off on this acting job in China, and I put on 2 stone in 2 months on this job. And it was, it really was a blessing in disguise. It was horrible because I had used my body essentially to get attention from men and feel good about myself. And suddenly I wasn't feeling good in my body at all. And when I got home from that trip in China, that job in China, my dad, and both my parents were obviously quite concerned, because that's the one thing I couldn't hide. I could hide all the drug taking and all the drama with men, but I couldn't hide that rapid weight gain. And they knew something was up. So my dad took me away to a health retreat in Thailand, just as a yoga holiday. And when we were there, he said this thing that completely changed my life. He said, if you focus on the insides, the outsides will take care of themselves. And obviously he was speaking as someone who'd been in rehab himself and struggled with addiction. So I really heard it that time. And I came back from that trip in Thailand, and I started, this has got literally a decade ago. It was right at the beginning of 2011. And I started working on my relationship with myself, because that's the reason that whatever we're struggling with in life, it's because our relationship with ourselves is not in a good place. So I started therapy, I started reading self-help books, I started coaching, like all these different things. And I also got into a relationship with someone who I'd known for quite a long time. He was an addict, but he'd been in rehab. So he was like 6 months out of rehab. Neither of us were anywhere near ready for a healthy relationship, but it was the healthiest I'd had, because we were actually talking about things. And, we were like looking at life in a different way. Anyway, long story short, he cheated on me, which was horrible, but is exactly what I needed, because that's what I'd done to every boyfriend I'd had before. So that's really what, this time 3 years, actually it was about this time 10 years ago that he was cheating on me. Funnily enough, it was August of 2011. And that is what that level of pain is what forced me to just have to go so much deeper into this work. So I did. And over time, I was so obsessed with it, and I just had kind of lost my passion for acting, which I thought would never happen. And my friend and me, who I'd been at drama school with, and she'd been on a similar journey, we set up this positive lifestyle movement called Addictive Daughter. And at the time, no one was talking about the stuff we were, mainly relationships, anxiety, depression, all of this stuff. And we ended up getting a book deal that went on to become The Inner Fix. And it was really successful. That was all sort of 5 years ago now. And then in that time, I'd met my now fiance, Joe. I met him in the summer of 2015 at a festival. And yeah, it was a really amazing relationship. But before that relationship, I'd spent a year and a half on my own, which I'd never done before. I'd never, ever wanted to be single. I just hated being on my own. But by that point, I was the healthiest I'd ever been. And the year that The Inner Fix came out, quite shortly afterwards, actually, my business partner at the time, she said, I actually don't feel we're supposed to be doing this anymore. And that was really hard, because it meant we walked away from a TV show. We actually had 5 or 6 different TV companies wanting to make TV show with us. It was all this success that I'd wanted as an actress. Suddenly I was getting it, but it just wasn't right to do it together. It was we'd had these amazing 4 years, but it was time to go our separate ways. So instantly I knew that what I wanted to focus on purely, because we'd been focusing on kind of quarter life crisis, just any area of your life that you're struggling with. And I knew now that I was more than a year into the best relationship I've ever had, I wanted to focus purely on love coaching and supporting women to transform their love lives as I'd done. And so essentially that's what I've been doing over the last 5 years. I've just I started writing a book when we were going through that business breakup, and it's literally just come out. So it feels quite like I've come full circle in a way. And now I'm sat here talking to you lovely ladies.
Wow, what a journey.
Amazing.
And your book that's just come out, Love is Coming, we've been reading it and we absolutely love it. And I think all of our listeners would love it. I think regardless of where you are, whether like you're single or you're dating or you're in a relationship, like there's something that will resonate with you in that book. And I loved how much you share, like you just obviously briefly just shared your story there, but you obviously in like quite a lot of detail share your personal story in this book. And that's what makes it so nice and different to most self-help books, because you like it's kind of like seeing you and how you've evolved, and you can relate so much to that. And also you give people like, you know, that sort of hope and that example of how, you know, working on yourself can bring you to that really healthy, amazing relationship that, you know, most of us want. But yeah, absolutely loved your book. But obviously in the book it's split down into the 3 sections of healing and then attracting and then committing. How come you wanted to kind of like set up like that? What was the process of the book of splitting it into those like three sort of, yeah, and like and then you push obviously so much about like how doing that inner work, how much that obviously impacts the relationship that you have and the importance of that.
So there was 2 different reasons. There was the sort of writing a book element. We'd obviously written the Inner Fix before, 5 years before, and that was also divided into 3 parts. And I've got a thing about threes. I just really like sort of, I think it's probably from when I did English literature at uni or even A levels. Like it was just always like, my teacher would always be like 3 sort of middle, you do intro, then 3 main sections, and then the conclusion. So that's always stuck with me. But in terms of actually the sort of, the point of it is when people come to me, whether to work with me one-to-one or just they send me a DM, it's everyone wants to know, how do I get the guy and how do I get the guy to stay? They want to know how to attract and how to keep. But the problem is, if you haven't done the healing work, then even if you attract them, firstly, you'll keep attracting the same kind of person and the same kind of relationship dynamic, and you won't be able to sustain it. The healing part is like not the sexy part, but it is so important. It's in a way, it's the most important, because if you don't have that foundation right, then you can't build a house if the foundations aren't there. And for me, it was so pivotal. Like however old you are, you're going to have been through painful relationships that would have affected your feelings and how you show up in your romantic life. You will have had a childhood, and even if we think our childhood was the most idyllic in the world, we will have absorbed things that will have been unhelpful for our romantic life, whether it's we watched our parents going through a bitter divorce, whether you watched your parents struggling with addiction like I did, whether you had really great parents but they worked loads in order to give you all these opportunities, so you never saw them, so your attachment style needs looking at. We all have stuff that we need to look at if we want to have a healthy and thriving romantic life in the future. So that's why I put that section. And then the attraction is, and commitment, I guess that's quite obvious. The attraction is sort of the fun, sexy bit. The funny thing is committing, which is what everyone thinks they want until they get it. I can't tell you how many women have worked with me and been like, I want the relationship. And then we do all this work and they get the relationship they want and they literally want to sabotage it. This is what I did as well when I attracted Joe into my life. They want to sabotage it. They want to find a reason why it's not right. And I'm like, this is literally everything you said you wanted. And now you've got it and you're freaked out, because ultimately, as human beings, we're always drawn to what is familiar, even if what is familiar is shit. So if you are used to dating emotionally unavailable assholes who ghost you, then anything outside of that, when a guy shows up and treats you well, you'll probably say things like, oh, maybe I just don't fancy him, or maybe, we're just more friends. Like, you'll find some reason because it's unfamiliar and it's really uncomfortable. And that's why coaching is so important, because then you've got a mirror there to support you and make you. And I mean, that's why I wrote the book as well, so that if you're dating or you start a relationship with someone, you can see all of these things that come up that you might not have realized oh, that's not necessarily a problem. If in fact this is a good thing, it means that I'm getting out my comfort zone. It means I'm doing something new, which is what we need to do. So what I find is actually the commitment section. That's where most of the funny stories are in the book, but also it's the hardest part. In a way, it's even harder than healing, because when you're committing to someone, you're not just dealing with your shit, you're also dealing with someone else's stuff. So it's really challenging.
It's so interesting, like the psychology behind it, because I feel like that happens a lot, and you do hear a lot of them when someone meets like the nice guy, and then they're like, "Oh no, there must be something wrong with them." But it's like actually the psychology of why they might be self-sabotaging is so interesting. And you just mentioned there about how we all have like our childhoods that we've been through, different attachment styles, different fears. For someone that may be listening that thinks, oh, I've not started on my healing work. What do I need to do? I'm attracting the wrong men. Where would you say they even start with identifying their own triggers, identifying their own fears?
I would say, well, you kind of already said it there. You can start just by looking into, what do I believe? What do I believe? So, do I believe that all the good guys are taken? Do I believe that all guys are cheaters and not to be trusted? Do I believe, or might be in a positive way, like I never struggled. I always believed that I could get a guy. That was not my issue. My issue was like, I'm not going to be able to keep them, mainly because I don't even know if I want to keep them. So just look at, what do I believe is true about romantic relationships? Do you believe it's possible to fall in love and have a really great relationship? Or do you believe every relationship is a shelf life? That's obviously going to have been influenced by what you saw with your family or close friends or relatives. So start there, just starting to get curious and examine what you believe and write about it. And then the next thing is, look at the patterns. Look at your past relationships and again, write down, what are the common threads? What do the guys have in common that you dated? And what do the relationships have in common? Because we will, subconsciously, we're always going to be drawn to things that are familiar. So 100% there'll be patterns. And I've got a really, really in-depth process that I take clients through when we work together. But you can just start by realizing that you're not just unlucky in love. That's what people say. Oh, I'm just really unlucky in love. And we go into the victim mode, and it's like, no, you're making choices, albeit subconsciously, but there is a reason that you are getting the results. And that's why I do the work I do, because I'm like, if someone like me, who really, and you've read the book, really was a disaster, if I can sort my shit out, then really anyone can. And it is not a case of us just being unlucky. If you keep saying, oh, I'm just really unlucky, then that's what you're going to experience. And actually, that's a cop-out. It's what we tell ourselves so we don't have to take responsibility. Really, if you want to get, like, this isn't even just in romance, anything in life. If you want to get different results, you need to take responsibility for how you are showing up and stop blaming the world, stop blaming your family. Like, I could sit and blame my family all I wanted. It doesn't change my reality. Like, it's up to me. When we are an adult, which is to say over the age of 18/21, the results you're getting in your life, whether it's finances, relationships, body image, anything, it's up to us to do the work to shift it. And that really is, I think, the hardest part for so many people, because it's much easier just to stay stuck where we are, whinging, complaining, bitching, moaning about it, even though that's like, it's familiar. So that's where I would start.
Okay, so awareness is key for the first step.
Mm-hmm.
What about for people, because I feel like I've even done this in myself, and I like heard other people doing it as well. When you identify that you have things to heal, like that are potentially going to get in your way with like romance and stuff, do you think like it's possible to, like, because some people, they say like, oh, I'm not going to date yet because I'm still going to work on myself, or and then I feel like you can, in a way, can kind of use it as another way to like just again avoid intimacy and potentially committing and things like that. So like, what advice would you give to someone to maybe have a bit more like confidence to know, yes, I'm aware I've got things maybe within myself I need to work on, but how can I step into like being vulnerable in dating? Because like you say in your book, like, you're opening yourself up to love, which is you're also opening yourself up to potential rejection. But the amazing love that you want, like, which was what obviously you found with your partner, is worth that potential rejection. But obviously when you're like a bit scared, or maybe you've been heartbroken before, you need to heal from that, like you can be really like, ooh, a bit scared to go back in. What advice would you give someone that's got that awareness that like they need to work on themselves, but to still try and pursue dating anyway, not like that their fear of maybe getting heartbroken again or something like that hold them back?
Mm-hmm. So a few things I'd say first, just to acknowledge, like, what season are you in? Are you in a season of like right now, it's a few months since the breakup. I'll always say after any significant relationship, and obviously that depends what it is for everyone, I'd say be on your own for at least a year. If you've been in a relationship that was over a year for certain, because I never did that. Apart from with Joe, I jumped from I had 3 months single. So I think it's really important just to acknowledge that and just ask yourself, am I in a period of healing at the moment and need to be on my own? Or actually, am I in the attraction phase? Am I like, no, I've been on my own. I've been working through stuff. I'm continuing to do that. But now I'm in a different phase. Like, I've been on my own for a period of time. And honestly, what I would say is, like, people think, oh, the only way to do it is be on dating apps. It's absolute bollocks. Like, you can be on dating apps, but it is your intention around them. If you don't have a good relationship with yourself, that's why I'd always say that's the most important thing, because everything in your life is just going to be a mirror and a reflection for how you feel about yourself. I've got clients who've had the best experiences on apps, and I know people who've had the worst experiences. It all depends on how you're showing up. So, this is why I believe that accountability is so important, because I think it's, especially as, I know you guys are in your mid-20s, I'm in my mid-30s. And so it's very different what's going on in your love life in those points. But, in our 30s, what most of the women are struggling with is all the good ones are taken. I'm the only single one left in my group. And that's really, really hard. And so that's why it's important to have the support of women or people who are in your situation and who are working on it. And so that, like you said, it's like, we can hold ourselves back because we say, oh, no, I'm just doing the healing, because you're scared to like take the next step. And in my programs, what we always do is like, when you've got a coach there who's reflecting back to you where you're at and saying, no, it's time that you move on to the next step. Or even in, I've got a free Facebook group, all these different things. So you're not just like by yourself randomly stabbing around in the dark. You're really clear at like, what stage am I at and what is the next right step for me? Being confident is like you will feel like your confidence is, again, it's all about how your relationship with you is. If your relationship with you is good, then whatever happens in your love life, you'll be okay. And that's when you're really ready to take that next step. Like I always say to my clients, if you can't be rejected, if someone else rejects you, that's because of where they're at. But if you have a great relationship with yourself, then you're always going to be okay. Like you can feel that pain and then you get over it pretty quickly. The problem is, too much of the time we abandon ourselves because we don't want to be abandoned by the other person. What I mean by that is we put on a show, we tell them what we think they want to hear, and we completely like step out of ourselves and our identity and who we really are in order to be accepted by someone else. And if you're still doing that, then you're not really ready. You're not going to attract in a healthy relationship and dynamic. So that comes back to, again, what season are you in? You know that you're ready to be dating when you're like, I love myself. I feel good about myself. I love my life. I've been focusing on building and cultivating a really vibrant, exciting life for myself aside from my romantic life. When you're in that space, not expecting everything to be perfect, not like it's never going to be perfect, but for the most part, you're feeling good 80% of the time. That is the perfect time to be dating because you will emit a different energy. So whether that's, you might want to do the apps. And I'd say if you're going to do the apps, do one at a time, have boundaries around your usage with it. But also, right now, touch wood, we are able to go out. We're not in lockdown. Go out, be with your friends, do fun things. Don't go out to meet guys. Just go out to enjoy your life. And I promise you will find that that's exactly the place that I was in 6 years ago. I mean, it's mine and Joe's. We're going to Wilderness Festival this weekend, which is where we met 6 years ago. So this time 6 years ago, I was just finished writing the first draft of the Inner Fix, and I was in a really good place in myself. So no wonder I met Joe in the magical way I did. And I've had so many clients have like similar experiences. So yeah, all this to say, your confidence will come naturally if you've been doing the work and you've been focusing on getting yourself into that magnetic attraction zone, which is what I talk about in the book.
Amazing.
Yeah, so interesting. I love that a lot. It's the way you explain it, it just really makes it so much more digestible as well. I think for people that are really thinking that. You
Yeah.
just touched there as well on dating apps and like the energy you're putting out. And I do find that very interesting because I've certainly experienced that in the past where like you've been, maybe you're on a dating app, but if your energy's not in the right place, you're only going to get back a certain like kind of energy. But I'd love to know your thoughts more on that, especially like turning up on dates, like the energy that you're bringing and the boundaries, and like there's part in your book where you're saying like you've got to assert what you want. Like how important is that? Because I feel like especially with younger generations as well, like people more around mine and Grace's age as well, I feel like there's that thing where people worry they're going to sound like too much or too cringe, even though like inside they're like, oh, I desire this relationship, but they don't want to say that because they don't want to sound too cringe.
Yeah.
But then how important is it for us to actually say what we want in order to
Oh my
attract
God,
what we
so
want?
important. And the thing is, you will stand out in a good way because no one else does it. But you can't do that until you were in a good place in yourself. Because otherwise, like, I tried to do it when I wasn't quite there. And it was a bit like, because I wasn't owning it. You have to be in a place in yourself where you are owning who you are and you are owning what you desire. And you will only get there when you've done all that work that I talk about in the heal part of the book. So it's really important because you don't want to waste your time. When I met Joe, literally, I can't tell you how many women say to me, like, no, I couldn't possibly, I look really desperate and cringe. I was like, you would not believe the stuff I said to Joe. But I didn't think I was going to see him again. So it wasn't like, I wasn't like expecting it from him. So for example, I said to him, oh yeah, no, I'm in a place in my life that I want to meet my life partner. And I want to, I'm not interested in having a sort of year-long fling or date. I don't want that. Like I'll go on dates with people, but ultimately where I'm at in my life is I want to meet my person and I want to create a brilliant life together. I want to travel around the world. Like my vision was fucking fun. It wasn't like I want to go and sit in the suburbs and fucking, it wasn't boring. It was like, he was like, wow, I want a bit of that. And I was just so free around it because I honestly just didn't think I was going to see him again, which really helped. I think the problem is so much of the time when we go on dates, like I used to do this all the time, where you like are imagining, you're not even really listening to what the person's saying. You're just like imagining what your wedding would be like or what your kids would look like. And it's like you're not being present. So the key is, like you were talking about, oh God, what is my dog doing? I can hear some really freaky noises from outside. Reggae. And then it goes silent. He just goes like this. So what was I saying? So you were talking about energy and boundaries. So with energy, I'd always say before you go on a date, get yourself in a great place. I have this thing called Goddess Hour, spend an hour or however long just making yourself feel good. Put some great tunes on, meditate, have something nice to eat if that's what you want. Do some, like, whatever works for you. There's, again, loads of tips in the book that can help with that. But then when you get there, it's, you have to know where you are, particularly around sex. I used to just do the old one night stands and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not anti that if that genuinely works for you. But what I see all the time with women is we sit and we go, oh, men are cheaters and men can't be trusted. It's like us women lie, and usually by omission, as much as men. 100%. Because we are really feeling, I want to be in love and I want to be in a relationship with this guy. We don't say that. He goes, yeah, I'm just sort of casually dating. We're like, yeah, I'm just up for a bit of fun as well, which is not true for us. And then we get pissed off if we have sex with them and they don't call us back. If you are not confident enough or own like what sex means to you, then he doesn't owe you shit. He doesn't owe you shit. Like it really is. I really believe it's time for women to start taking some responsibility in our love lives and not just keep deflecting and saying men are all this and men are all that. Men have shit and need to show up better, but so do we. And men are only, like I'm telling you now from what I've seen with Joe and from all my clients in amazing relationships, men love a strong woman. They do. Like not all men are going to be right for you and you're not going to be right for all men. But when you are bold enough in yourself to just own, like I said, who you are, where you're at in your life and what you desire and how you expect to be treated, men will step up or they won't. They'll fall away and you will have saved yourself so much time and energy. So the biggest thing I see like stress around, particularly in the early days, is around sex, because we, so much of the time, and I used to like, yeah, just have sex and sort of hope they knew that meant that we, like, it meant something to me. But I never said that. So why would they know that? You know? It was, there's a lot of emotional manipulation. I think that a lot of the time, us women, it was subconscious. We don't even realize we're doing it. So just be clear and be direct. And if that sounds terrifying, it's because you haven't done enough of the work and heal. When you've had enough pain and enough bullshit in your love life, that's where you get to the point of like, I will not abandon myself anymore just so this guy doesn't reject me. Because guess what? He's only going to reject you anyway further down the line. So just don't waste your time with it. And I also say, and this is a hard one, particularly if you're British, first date, no booze. Go and do something at like 11 a.m., go for a walk, just to see whether you can connect with this person without a drink. Because how many dates have you been at? Well, I know for me, like, you can like literally not have any chemistry with someone or like have any chat, but you have a few drinks, and of course suddenly there's and then again, you're wasting your time because it wasn't a real connection. So I always say, go, like, even if you meet at 11 a.m., go for a walk and whatever museum, and then if it goes well, then maybe go to the pub later, but like at least establish that there's something there first. I think so much of the time, like, I used to get all upset and like, you know, disappointed, drama around a guy that actually I didn't even really like. I just wanted some attention from someone and went about getting it in a really manipulative way. And then when eventually, inevitably, he kind of either ghosted me or sort of, you know, just backed off, I'd get all livid. I was like, I didn't even like this guy in the first place, but it's totally my responsibility because I just kept making really bad choices in this whole dating debacle. So it's, again, it comes back to taking responsibility.
Yeah, I love what you were just saying there about the going for a first date without booze, because I've thought that before. Because even just from having like a drink, it clouds you. You can't properly see.
I always say to you, don't know, I'll talk to anyone when I've had a drink.
Yeah, you can't properly
anyone.
like see. You know, if you actually like this person because the alcohol's there. But yeah, I loved everything that you just said there, and like everything that you were saying about like sex and how we don't communicate how that means to us, and then obviously like, yeah, and we go around saying, oh, all men are trash and whatever, but yeah, obviously we need to take responsibility in how we're showing up and like being open and honest about our boundaries and what we want. And obviously all that comes back to the root of like self-love and like working on yourself to be confident enough to do that. It sounds like throughout your book, it really seems like the whole a big theme in it is self-love, and that being that like foundation to build up so many things in your life from, but especially relationships. But there's a really interesting part of your book that I loved, and I feel like people talk about this book usually come from it in the wrong way, but you like brought like really interesting knowledge to it. But it was about like high achieving women and how obviously they like kill it in their career, in their like friends, families, like all that stuff's going great, but then their romantic side, their life is like completely like just not going how they want at all. And obviously like so many people are like, oh, it's because men are intimidated by a big boss woman and stuff like that, when actually is that necessarily the case? But obviously you brought to it a new way of thinking, which was really refreshing. I feel like it's such a, especially with how like the world is going as well, like, and as you say in the book, like women are on that now upward trajectory to be able to have their own careers and do whatever they want, and there's not anything coming to stand in the way. There's only things coming to move more blocks out of the way. So it's going to keep coming that more women are showing up in their careers in this way than they ever have done, and as a result potentially like finding that in their romantic life things aren't working well. So I loved how you came at it, and I'd love you to share now with like the listeners like your thoughts on that, and if there's any like, you know, high achieving women listening now that this might really really help them if their romantic life is just not going as they want it to.
Well, I think it starts by what we've already talked about in terms of look at the excuses or the things you tell yourself, the limiting beliefs you tell yourself. Oh, men are intimidated by my success. Some of them might be, but not all of them. 100%, not all of them. That's a way that you can keep yourself where you are. And, you know, I talk, and in fact, I'm just going to turn to it because there's a few different things that I talk about. But Okay, so it's the chapter is how to be as successful at love as you are at work. And one of the main things is that we've already talked about, is not owning and not being honest and direct. And that's something, it's like you get that in your career, but you're not applying that to your love life. And then the flip side of that is that there are things that you do in your love life, in your work life, if you're successful, that you're also doing in your love life, but it doesn't work. So it's real. It really is nuances, and having to go and to look at, okay, so in my career, I have boundaries. I know my worth. If someone dicks me around, I won't take it. I'll walk away. All of these different things. Why am I not doing that in my love life? Because I don't value myself in that dynamic in the same way I do in my work life. So that's the first thing. So that's where you need to practice what you're doing in your work life and apply it to your love life. The other thing is, in your work life, you've got to where, generally speaking, a woman's got to where she is by employing more of her masculine qualities. So that's being more the energetic leader, directing, maneuvering, and all of those things. They're not bad in and of themselves, but when you're applying that to a romantic dynamic, what this looks like is the woman constantly, contacting first, or calling, or like setting up a date, like, oh, I'll do it, I'll organize the date. And actually, it's like, no, let the man do that. It's not saying, oh, you can never do it, but it's the energy of, like, particularly in the early days, the man, look at how nature works. This is when people get all like funny about it. It's like, look at how nature works. In nature, look at the male peacock. The male peacock is the one that's like with the crazy feathers and is like all like this. Let them do all the hard work. It does not make you weaker. Actually, I've always, and this is something I've always had right. I've always been like, no, like, I'm in my power. I like, let the man run through hoops and, want to take me out and do all of those things. I don't feel lesser than that he's directing that. There are other things that I direct, or that I'm kind of more in control of. But in those early dates, it really is understanding that, generally speaking, the male wants to drive. And it's not, that joke of like, men love a chase. They do. Of course, we all do that a little bit, but we don't want to get into the gamey territory. We don't want it to be the manipulation. We want it to be where it's fun and it's a bit playful and bantery and flirty. So there's nuances, and there's a fine line between it, because on the one hand, you want to be open and honest and clear. And on the other hand, you want to have a bit of that mystery. But as my friend Fleur says, don't play hard to get, be hard to get. Have a vibrant, exciting life for yourself outside of your romantic life. I used to do it where I'd like, the guy would be like, oh, why don't we meet on this day? And I already had plans with friends, but I'd be like, yeah, no, that's fine. And I cancel my friends. Not cool. Not okay. It's like, no, I'm seeing friends that night. How about this night, But I think we cancel things like that. And, we don't stay true to ourselves because we're afraid like we're going to be rejected. So we'll accept any small crumb. And again, that goes against, when you look at, I see I literally have coached the most unbelievably successful women, and you look at how they're showing up in their love life, and you look at how they're showing up in their career, and you're like, it doesn't make sense. So we need to, the important thing is that we speak up where we need to, and we need to like not speak up, but not take up so much of the directive energy. So speak up when it comes to boundaries, expectations, what you desire, where you're at in life. And when it comes to letting the man lead, that's more about, okay, let him book the date, let him organize it, and allow him to kind of step into the energetic leadership, masculine energy, instead of doing everything for him. So it's quite complex, because there are quite a few different sort of elements with it, but that is the whole point of it. Relationships between men and women are complex, and there are nuances. So there's that it's not just like a one size fits all. It's not as simple as, like, nothing is black and white. So I've really tried to like break that chapter down into different sections to show all of what can seem almost like contradictory, but actually makes total sense. Again, looking out at nature, there's so many things that seem to contradict, but they work and they flow beautifully, because every cell and every organism sort of has its role and knows when it's time to bloom and knows when it's time to not. Whereas us humans, we're just frantic constantly. We just need to chill out, essentially.
It's so interesting, and I've definitely like observed this before in like where I'd like worked before. I was in fashion, and I was surrounded by like big driven women, because like to people always think like in fashion, oh, it's just clothes, blah blah, but actually like it's a relentless industry. It requires like a lot of ambition and like determination. So a lot of the women that work in it are very like, you know, going for it. And I would see that as well in like a lot of the senior women there, like not all of them, but quite a lot of them would be absolutely like killing it at work. And then in their romantic life, it was like, yeah, letting people just accepting crumbs and all of this stuff. And it was like, there's such a difference between you showing up in these different parts of your life. It's so like, why do you think that happens, where you like, where women end up that way, where they're like killing it, super confident, amazing at work, everything is great, and then in their romantic life it's like a completely different person? Because this happens to so many people. But what is it, what is like the root of that that's causing that behavior and that big contrast between two important areas of your life where you're kind of showing up so differently?
It's such a good question. I think there's a lot of things. I think the first thing is just to contextualize it, which again I do in the book, but it's like, us women, we've not had power for very long over our money, finances, buying property. I share one of the statistics in the book just as as an idea. Like 1991 is when they made marital rape illegal. Like that's the level we're dealing with. So we've had a lot of freedom and change and growth happen in a very short amount of time. And so whenever that happens, it's like, it's like I always think of that game like Splatter Rat. It's like, you get one thing here and you get the rat and you splat it, and then another one pops up over here. So it's like you're always trying to kind of manage one thing. And because we've had so much focus on, career and being driven that way, we haven't been working on our love lives. Love coaching is a very new thing. Therapy's been around for a long time. What are you doing? Sorry, that's my dog. He is being such a little shit. So I think we're trying to catch up, and it's like realizing you invest in your career, like you give it time and energy and attention, and you invest money into it. Do you do that with your love life? Probably not, because it's not a common thing yet. It's starting to become more common. How can you possibly, like, if you're going to be really successful in fashion, you would have had to go somewhere and learn about that, and like I didn't just know this stuff. Like I've spent years studying and training and learning all of this different stuff, and that's what I now teach in my programs. So it's realizing, number one, that like you're going to get results in the area that you invest in. And investing in your love life, people just think, oh, that means buying nice clothes, getting skinny, and like going on dates. That's like the tip of the iceberg. What about all the deep inner work? There's so much that you don't realize until you start the journey and start doing the work. So that's the first thing. It's like women have not been investing in the right way in their love life. I think another thing is that we've also been kind of led to believe that we can't have it all. We can't have both. We can be super successful, but we then can't have the great relationship. And I think another thing is it's the identity piece, that when we're, like I've said already, like when we are thriving in work, for the most part, we are in our masculine energy, and that's a great thing. But then because we're in that energy a lot, when it comes to our love life, we show up in the masculine by, as I said, like driving dates, like we're showing up in the masculine in the inappropriate ways that doesn't really work. And so the way to get through it is you have to start looking at this stuff. You've got to start researching, reading into it, starting to do things differently, because it's absolutely possible to turn it around. But I think really the main thing is that we're almost a victim of our own success. Do you know what I mean? When it comes to work, but it's possible to have both. But you cannot expect that your love life is going to change until you invest the same energy that you've invested into your career, or at least towards even half the energy would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you've touched on that, because I feel like so many people listening probably would have never heard it spoke about like that, especially to do with like the intimidating things. I feel like you hear that thrown about a lot, like men
Yeah,
are
a lot.
intimidated by strong women. And then how many women have probably thought, oh my gosh, do I need to like downplay myself, like downplay my skills and stuff to impress a man, when really it could be something as simple as they're showing up too much in their masculine energy. So I'm really, really glad that you spoke about that and explained it so well and in such an interesting way. You touched before on this, because obviously me and Grace haven't really experienced this. We're like mid-20s, but the women that are kind of getting into their 30s, and of course it comes with that societal pressure of like the undergoing, oh, you got to get married, you got to have kids, and like no matter how much you try and avoid it, it's there. And I feel like I do feel for women that really feel that pressure. And I can also imagine that when you are under that pressure, that causes more resistance in a way, especially with dating, because you do have that like frantic energy. But what do you like, Hannah? Like, how do you help with your clients that are kind of at that stage where they feel that societal pressure, but they don't want to give into that? They don't want to be frantic.
Oh, it's really hard. Like I've got women who are, in their early to mid 40s, and so it's still possible to have a child. But it does, of course, the fact is, we do have a biological clock, and we have to be real about that. And for some women, it's not going to happen. But at the same time, there's some women who I know who are in relationships, have been for a long time. They're healthy and they're happy, and they can't have kids for whatever reason. And it's one of those things where, life is unpredictable and we don't know what we're going to get. And like, I never get things on my timeline, anything I desire. So I think it's important to realize that, I've got that section in the book about fuck the timeline, because when we live to that sort of this arbitrary timelines, men don't do that, by the way. It's only us women that do. Oh, well, by this age, I should have this, and by that, I should be there. And not many men have it anyway, whereas most women I know have it. I'm not where I thought I should be or I would be at this point in my life. That's something I hear really often. So I think the key is first to acknowledge it and to feel the feelings around it and to do the healing work around that sense of loss, disappointment, fear that it's never going to happen for you. And then I think it's just like, you've just got to choose. You've just got to choose. Am I going to let how I feel about myself and my life and where I'm at in my life be dictated by society or not? Because I can't sit here and promise you that every woman I work with is going to get their partner in time to have a kid. But I also can't promise, like someone, like I said, like someone who's already in a relationship doesn't mean they're going to be able to have a baby. Like, but there are other options. You can adopt that. There are other ways around it. Sometimes in life, like life is unpredictable. And I think we just have to accept that and know that, yes, having a baby is one thing, but there's a lot of other things in life that are also unpredictable, but maybe, I'll be honest, like I'm in that place in my life where I could have a child. And I'm very fortunate that I've got myself into a position where I could. But I am like, I just don't know whether I'm conflicted about it. And I can feel guilty when I've got friends who really want it and can't, or are single right now, or whatever it is. It's like, you just have to accept that, like, no one knows what's going to happen. Ultimately, like, life is, as I said, life is unpredictable. But you don't have to stay stuck in that place. You don't have to stay stuck in that place of feeling shit about yourself and your life. Like, think of all the other things that are working. And also, and I know this is going to sound like a joke, what I'm about to say, but I'm being deadly serious. Get a dog. Get a dog. Like, I've actually had clients do that, where they're like, they really wanted a baby so much, and they got a puppy and like, you're a dog mum now, and they've got that nurturing, they're able to do that and love that and have that company. And then some of them have gone on to like get great relationships as a result, because it's just taken away that, like, the sting of like desperate to be a mum. And I think from what I've been told, like, having a puppy is like the closest thing you can get outside of having a baby. Certainly it's felt that way for me. So I think I don't think there's a simple answer. I think it's really it's complex. And but women, I also believe, not even believe, like, I've spoken to doctor friends about this, women's bodies are evolving to have children later as well. because we, before we were much younger, weren't we? And like, I think the average age of having a kid, like, I can't remember how 70 years or even 50 years ago was like 23, and now it's 33. Because as we are becoming more, career focused, and, not we've got more options and more freedom available to us, then we don't have to, or don't feel that same pressure to have a child at a younger age. So, and also the final thing I'll say on this is, our planet is really, really overpopulated. So us having children later or not at all has its upsides. I know that's not a very happy point, but it is true.
No, that is true. Yeah, I have friends that are like starting to reach, like, obviously in their late 20s, reaching 30, and it's like this panic switch comes on.
Yes.
And just like, oh, I need to find someone, and then what you then don't want them to obviously do is, and you wouldn't want yourself to do that either, is to start to drop your standards as well, or like, yes, basically settle for not what you actually want just because you feel like you're on that ticking time clock. Because that, obviously, if you're going with someone that you don't actually fully, it's not going to end well later down the line anyway. So yeah, it's annoying that women have that, like, and that like they feel that their relationship status, whether they're single or not, and what age they're single at, and defines them so much. It's like it's hard to shake it off, but that's
so
really
listen, I was 29 when I met Joe, and I'd been doing, I had a bloody positive lifestyle movement I was running with a friend. I was writing a self-help book, and I was feeling the pressure. There is something that happens to a woman. There's something about the 30th birthday.
Yeah.
And it really messes our head up. And I think it's just, again, it's important to know that, and it's important to connect with other women who are in the same place as you, but who are like showing up in that like positively, and not just going to sit and like be in the fear, and like, because that's not going to help you. You need to be around people who are, who want to do life differently, and to play life at a deeper level, and not just focus on, because it's a superficial thing just to, and we've had it drilled into us as women. So it's understandable why we feel this, that our worth in our 30, like basically after the age of 30, a woman's worth goes down, perceived worth, and a man's goes up. And I was just like, I am not taking that on. That is a story, a really subliminal, insidious story, and a narrative, and I refuse to take it on. But the only way I'm able to do that is because I've got other women around me who are also like, nope, I get better every year. I'm much, like I've got in the book, I talk about, being like a fine wine. You can choose to see yourself like that. Because honestly, this time a decade ago, I was a bloody mess. Like, I'm way better than I was then. But just because I was younger, we think that means, and also with, I think we get blitzed with in the media of like all these overnight successes of like 19-year-olds. So then you're like 25 and you're like, shit, like I haven't made it, and then feel crap about yourself. It's ridiculous.
No, it's so true. It's refreshing to hear you speak about it in that way. I actually just want to jump back to when we were talking before about the high achieving women, and you were saying about how like they kind of need to approach the dating with less of the masculine energy, in the sense of letting the man lead and stuff like that. Obviously, you have your partner Joe, and you obviously coach loads of women, so you're getting to see inside so many different dating scenarios of everything that's going on right now. I was like, I was saying like, it's only going to keep going up, this, that women are going to keep being this career driven people that we are now, because like I said, there's not things coming in the way of it, it's things moving out of the way. How are like men, because I feel like I don't ever hear men really speaking about this, and I don't know if you'll have like I don't know, from seeing all your clients, if you'll see like a pattern or anything to say on this, but how are men finding that that there's a lot more women that show up in that way? Like, because obviously, and it's hard because there's obviously this feminist movement, and like I get all of that as well, but that's why you're saying it's kind of hard to speak about it sometimes, because of letting the man lead, let them sort out the date, and you just step back. Some people, it's that funny line where it's like, oh, but women are meant to be all independent and blah blah and all of that stuff, and it's like, yeah, but how are men, and if I don't know if you'll know, but how are they finding this current time, and like where things are going, and how are they having to kind of show up differently? Because like I don't know, in a way, sometimes I think masculinity within a man, even especially at the minute, is sometimes like seen as this bad thing as well. Like, so it's, I always wonder like how they feel on, because as well, I think in dating we can get so much in our heads as well about like how are they perceiving me? How is this, rather than like you're saying, being present on the date and stuff like that. And we get so in our own heads. And like you said, we have to take responsibility for how we're showing up. It was like, I'm very curious about what they feel and think about how
All
women
of
are
it.
changing and what's going on. Yeah. Don't know
Yeah.
if you know, have an
I think
insight.
the first thing I want to say is I do really feel for Matt. Like, despite everything, I would rather be a woman than a man in today's world. I think that, again, we can have the narrative because we do live in a patriarchal culture and there's all sorts of bullshit that's resulted because of that. But it's, that system has been enabled by both men and women. We have been complicit in it. And we have been complicit every time we don't speak up and say our truth in a romantic context or any other context. And, I think it totally depends which man you speak to. Some men will be, of course, will be triggered. And what's interesting, I wanted to mention this when we were talking about, those guys where the women who go, oh, men are intimidated by my success. It's like, no, you're attracting those type of men because that's the narrative you have. So that's all you see. Joe, bloody loves it. Joe, like, he's like, I would bloody love it. I'd love to be a stay-at-home dad. I said, well, you better get better at cleaning then. But he does not. He's got a really strong mum, and he's seen like, and I think that's a really big thing. Is like, what did the man grow up with? Women, mother and sisters is a huge thing in how they will relate to women. So I think it's like everything is. Some men think it's the best thing that women are like getting getting more power. And some men are, of course, triggered by it and don't know what to do. And all you'd have to do is like sit down with them for half an hour and go, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your mother. Did you go to an all boys board? I've got guy friends went to an all boys boarding school that was horrific. And there was so much like misogyny and all sorts of stuff there that, of course, that's influenced the way that they relate to women now. But guess what? Men can't treat you like shit unless you let them. And that's something we have to remember. We keep deflecting our responsibility because it's like, I know now all of the shit that used to happen to me back in the day when men, whether it was sexual or otherwise, treated me badly. That doesn't happen to me anymore because I'm not an easy target for it and I don't attract in those sort of people into my life. So I think that it's, it's also really great talking to men about this. Like I love talking to men, to my guy friends about exactly what we're talking about right now, because we can make, I think, we might date someone that we don't know very well. And then we make all sorts of assumptions about how all men are about a particular subject. And actually it's like, no, talk to them because there are as many different men and as many different opinions as there are women. And I think, again, I don't think it's helpful when from that feministic point of view, like, of course I'm a feminist. We should all be feminists because a feminist is someone who believes that men and women are equal. But equal does not mean the same. They are different. And we need to stop. And I just think we need to stop this sort of us versus them because I don't think that's helpful. It's like, no, let's work together. Let's support one another. Yes, let's call out men when they're being dickheads, but let's call out women when they're being dickheads. But not in a shaming way, like in a mature, respectful way. Let's have these sort of conversations because I've honestly been so surprised by men, like in a good way, so much of the time. And I don't think we hear that very often. I think like nowadays the narrative is very much like men are bad and men are shit and men ghost and men do this and poor women. And that's generally speaking. And I think that we've got to look at our stuff as well. I know I've said that about 1,000 times and I always do in like interviews because I don't think it gets talked about enough, particularly in terms of dating.
No, I think that's such an incredible answer. I really like how you've always got this like constant theme of responsibility. Like, how are you showing up? It's not so much what do you want to attract, who do you want to attract. It's like, who are you showing up as and how can you heal, like you said, heal, attract, commit to your own stuff. I've just loved this interview so much. It's been so interesting. I'm going to go on to that last one unless you have any more.
No, yeah, go for it.
So we wanted to ask you this because I feel like you're just so wise with everything you've been through. You're so inspiring. So if there was one thing that you could have told Persia in her 20s, what would it have been?
Oh, great question. Don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine. I think there'd be so many things. Well, no, I'd probably say it depends at what point in my 20s?
I love that.
What point in my 20s?
We'll say mid-20s, because we're mid-20s now.
Okay,
so.
mid-20s. So that's just when I started to sort my stuff out. I would say prioritize your relationship with you. Learn to fall in love with yourself. Focus on you. And you give it a decade and you will have a life beyond your wildest dreams. Because you can't not. If you make that relationship with you the number one priority in your life, everything else will start to reflect that love and respect you have for yourself. I think respect, we talk a lot about self-love. Very important. I don't think we talk nearly enough about self-respect. And I did not respect myself, particularly in my early 20s. So that's what I'd say is like honor and respect yourself like you would like your best friend or your sister or whatever. Because, and it's, again, we don't need to be perfect. I'm hardly like walking around like this, like perfect. Like I make mistakes all the time. Like really, I do in all different areas of my life. But I'm much better at coming back now and just owning it first with myself and then other people. And sometimes that means, saying, listen, you really upset me, or what you said really upset me. And that crossed a boundary, and I don't want that to happen again. And sometimes it means, listen, I was a bitch just then. I'm really sorry. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, first respect yourself by telling the truth to yourself, and then that respect will be reflected back in your other relationships. And yeah, the better it gets, the better it gets. Like every year of my life gets better, and it's not without its challenges. This is a really long thing that I'm saying to my 25-year-old self, but I've had a really hard first half of this year for a lot of different reasons, and there's a lot of good stuff that happened. But sometimes life can be a bit shit, and life can be really hard. But once you make that relationship with yourself and you learn these tools and you realize that like you are an eternal, like I'm an eternal student, I will always be learning and always growing, because like Tony Robbins says, like, humans are happiest when we're making progress. So this is all a journey. There is no destination to get to. It's just like, keep it in the day, enjoy your life, look at what is working and what you've got to be grateful for. And it just will naturally and organically evolve as you go.
Amazing.
Very long-winded answer.
No, great advice. I love it. So Persia, where can everybody find you? And obviously you've got your amazing book, Love is Coming, which me and Abby have both read and absolutely loved. Like, couldn't put it down.
Changing.
Yeah, I feel like our audience will really, really enjoy this book. So where can everyone find you? Where can they get your book? And how can they get involved with you if they want to work with you?
Okay, so if you want the book, go to loveiscomingbook.com. and it's all there, or my website, persialawson.com, and that will tell you more about me and how we could work together. I'm very vocal on Instagram at Persia Lawson. It's quite easy. There's not many Persia Lawsons out there. I have a podcast called Love is Coming Podcast. We've got loads of episodes on, some solo ones with just me and some guest experts, and they've just, everything you can possibly think of about, healing, attracting, committing in your love life. I've got a program you can find on my website. It's like a 4-day mini course, and that's just £37. So I've got like free stuff. I've got like a free training on there called The Fastest Way to Meet Your Soulmate, which is really good. It's a free audio training. So it's like, depending where you're at, if you want to just, get some free advice, go to the podcast or go to that training. If you're at the point you're like, I want a bit more, I would say get the book anyway, because the book, I'm just like, it's my baby. Yeah. I'm so proud of it. But yeah, that program is for people who are like, right, I want to kind of commit that bit more, because there is something about putting money down where you will take it more seriously, whether that's a tenner on a book or £37 on a program. And then, I've got my flagship program, Get Your Soulmate. I've got all sorts of stuff, but just depends where you're at. As to what level of commitment you want to invest in yourself. But please send me a DM. I love getting DMs from people, and introduce yourself.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a really, really great conversation, and it's been lovely
it's
to
been
share
so
you with
good.
our audience. And I really think they'll really, really enjoyed this chat, and I think a lot of them will go on to get the book, because we all like the similar books, our listeners, and they always go and pick up the ones we recommend. So I'm sure they'll go pick it up and really enjoy it as well. So thank you so much for being here with us today, and for everything that you do, all the knowledge you share. It's great.
Thank you, loves. I've loved this.
Wow, I hope you enjoyed that episode, everyone, as much as we enjoyed picking Persia's brain, asking her all the questions, get all the good dating advice for you guys and for us as well. So if you want to get involved with Persia, you know where to go. Go and follow her on Instagram. We've linked everything in the show notes. If you want to get a copy of her book, we've left a link there. Me and Abby have read it and it's amazing. So we really recommend you guys go and grab yourself a copy.
Yeah, definitely. Just go and soak up more of her energy. Like, I'm sure from this episode you understood like her incredible energy and how much everything she says just lands. So like, if you dive into her book, you're going to learn so much more.
But make sure you come and follow us on Instagram at Finding Your Feet Podcast. That's where we are every day of the week. You don't need to wait until every Wednesday to hear from us. Come and join our community on Instagram. Come share the episode, DM us, share it on your story. Let us know what you thought about the show. We'd love to hear your feedback on the podcast.
And if you love this interview with Persia, we would love to know your thoughts on an Apple Podcast review, and we may even read it out on the next show.
Yes, and if you guys want to get involved with us further, you can join our weekly mailing list. We email you every Monday morning with a positive, inspirational email to start the week off right. So you just click the link in our show notes to subscribe to our weekly mailing list. No spam, no marketing, just good vibes if you want to be a part of that as well.
And if you do head to our website, findingyourfeetpodcast.com, you will see our range of meditations and affirmations, which we are so, so proud of, because we literally live by our morning meditations and our affirmations. So if you do want to work on a specific area, maybe like career, self-belief, you can go and find our 15-minute affirmations, which are planned and recorded by us, or a range of meditations if you're looking to work more on your own meditation journey.
Thank you so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.